Hello and welcome. This is One Voice here on Asia One with me, Craig Vermey. In today's show, I will be looking at Afghanistan. 5 years after the Taliban swept back into Kabul, Afghanistan remains a nation struggling to define its future under an interim government that still lacks international recognition but maintains near total control over the country. While the Taliban publicly project unity, many analysts and Afghans increasingly describe a system shaped by competing centres of power. In Kandahar, with the supreme leader and his inner circle driving movements of ideological direction, while officials in Kabul and parts of the north are outwardly focused on diplomacy, engagement with the outside world. These tensions have fueled growing debate about who is really governing Afghanistan and whether there are effectively two competing visions for the country's future. At the same time, the Taliban are seeking to break out of international isolation. A recent visit by Taliban representatives to Brussels sparked fierce criticism from human rights groups and European politicians who warned that engaging with the movement risks legitimising one of the world's most restrictive regimes. Yet, European officials argued that dialogue is necessary to address migration security concerns and regional stability. Meanwhile, Afghanistan is also moving to strengthen its ties with India through trade, investment and connectivity projects. A development closely watched in Pakistan, where relations with Kabul remain strained by border clashes, security concerns and disputes over terror groups. The Taliban frequently point to improved security, greater territorial control, compared with the years of war. Critics, however, argue that Afghanistan remains politically isolated, economically fragile, and governed by a leadership more focused on ideological control than inclusive governance. As the Taliban seek greater international acceptance, a fundamental question remains unanswered. Can Afghanistan build stable relations with the world while power remains concentrated in the hands of an unrecognised government facing growing criticism both at home and abroad? To look at that with me is Ajmal Suhail, Senior Intelligence and Counter-Terrorism Analyst and former Afghan politician. Ajmal, thank you very much for joining me today. So let's sort of start briefly with sort of the bigger picture. It's 5 years since the Taliban came back into power. And how would you assess the overall picture?
Okay, thank you for having me. So the most significant part of the Taliban, they proclaim that they brought stability to Afghanistan, and under their control, there's no opposition, or there's no room for oppositions to destabilize the regime, and their regime is not under situation of contested situation. So to some extent, they're right, but when we are focusing on Afghanistan from geopolitical point of view, or from the counter-terrorism perspective, the Taliban in 5 years, which they are proud of having a stable government and also a sort of the stability, it's really a tactical stability. So in tactical stabilities all the time, could be done through suppression, through coercion, but in reality, the Taliban are far away from the strategic stability. The strategic stability is based on the legitimacy, how the government would be legitimate, and the legitimacy comes mainly from the population, which the Taliban only rely on the legitimacy from their own fighters. And then, of course, the international recognition and also the government structural institutions which are not tangible for a continuation of a stable, a strategic stability. So if you put together all these pieces together, so at the end, the more you rely on suppression, the more you rely on coercion, the more you erode the strategic stability of a country.
Now, I said in the introduction that it's seen as Kandahar versus Kabul. How is that playing out?
Of course, there is like a fracture within the Taliban system based in Kandahar and Kabul. But what I see is this also this disagreement or this contest is a little bit tactical. Why it is tactical? Because the Kabul-based ministers or the Kabul-based part of the Taliban, they will not threaten a regime change. In case there would be some sort of like competition between Kandahar and Kabul. Kabul is more pragmatic. They're looking to the outside world, engaging with the outside world. The Kandahar is more ideological based and having keep Afghanistan isolated from the rest of the world. But the ministers or the Kabul fragment will not be in a position to try for a regime change that ultimately will be like to compromise their own safety and their own security and their own future.
Mm-hmm. So does the supreme leader have overall control, or is Kabul doing its own thing?
I think that, as I said, there's a sort of like competition between Kabul and Kandahar, and all the time Kandahar want to try to keep its control over the entire system and the entire government and the entire group of the Taliban. But the Kabul, you could say, the Kabul regime is trying to be more interested in engaging with the outside world. This is a sort of a pragmatism against the sort of the ideological mainstream relationship that they want to keep it for a long time or for their own interest. But at the end of the day, as I said, this contest or this competition will not move beyond to remove the government of the Taliban or to replace or to look for another government. So they are a part of this government. They're trying, but their competition will not end it up in the removal of the Taliban regime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So do you think that they can govern effectively while they're split?
Of course, from the tactical point of view, when they're splitting between Kandahar and Kabul, of course, there's a possibility to to overcome the threats from the international community of further isolations. So this is sort of like a lifeline that's showing up that we are struggling to maintain the engagement or to further engagement with the outside world. But the Kandahar is on the other sides, they don't want it. So this is a sort of like a show off that they're trying. But in reality, when something really changes towards the strategic changes in the country. So Kandahar will take the driving seat again and prevent in that direction. So, but this splitting is, of course, it somehow undermines the control, or how can I say, undermines the influence of the Taliban across the region and across the country.
Mm-hmm. Now, the recent trip by Taliban representatives to Brussels was met with very mixed reaction. Do you think the Taliban are able to strengthen their international ties? The Europeans said they needed to do this because of security concerns in the region. They didn't say that they wanted to have a closer relationship necessarily. So these trips, and only a few countries have recognised the interim government as a government. So how are they been in Europe?
From the European perspective, I know that. So let me say it from the counterterrorism or counterintelligence perspective, that we have two sort of like threats. One is a far threat and the other is a near threat. Afghanistan has been from quite some time a far threat. And for the Europe, as a near threat is, of course, what happens within the realm of European community, more likely happening in Ukraine. So they are more interested and they think it's a near threat. It's really matters for Europe. And also there are other factors like contest or a sort of crisis in the Middle East and mainly on the access to to energy. This is the more on, and I can say that this is the significant part of the European policy to just to work on it, how to deal with. But Afghanistan is something that, as I said, a far threat. Whatever happens, they are less of interest of the international community on the top, and specifically for the European countries, whose power is limited to engage in the far away area like Afghanistan. But still, instability in Afghanistan, economic disaster, you could say it, in Afghanistan, or the regime which is significantly undermine the human rights and the women rights in the country, and of course the civil rights in the country. It is really concerning for the European countries, and that is why they are trying a sort of like having engagement. But this engagement does not mean control. This engagement for influence. However, a country does not have military presence, or there is no geopolitical connection between European countries and Afghanistan, because from the geopolitical point of view, either these two countries or the relationship be either politically motivated or geographically motivated. From the political point of view, European countries are all democratic governance countries or regimes or governments. In Afghanistan, it is ultra ideological or Islamic regime. So there's no political connections between. And geographically as well, Afghanistan is far, far away to Europe to be geographically connected. So there is no geographical base and there is no political base to engage. But the only thing they make them to get aligned is that the migration and also the security which could rise from Afghanistan. As everybody knows that the Taliban harbor the terrorist organizations as a part of their deterrence policy. So the European countries think when they are harboring the terrorists for deterrence policy, they could use this card to pressure the European countries. In this concern, the European countries are more relying for their internal security and also for their border security, not to be undermined by the terrorist organization. So that's why they are engaged with the Taliban to calm them down.
While you say there's no link in those two parts, there is a link because Afghanistan remains under severe sanctions. But am I right in saying that the Taliban and some of the terror organizations are laundering their money through Europe?
Of course, this happens, but the only or the most important thing is to compare the Taliban regime before 2021. In that time, Afghanistan was an open arena for all the terrorist organizations operating and planning to engage in the international level. But today's terrorism in Afghanistan is, of course, it's open. It's all the terrorist organizations are operating, but their tactical and their strategic engagement to undermine the security or to plan an attack in European countries or in the U.S. It is not possible because the Taliban, there's some sort of restrictions or they're restrained on the international engagement specifically to plan a terrorist attack. And that is why the European countries are engaged to make sure that this situation will not turn to the open arena like before 2001, that the terrorist operation could use Afghanistan as a hotbed to plan and to project power and to undermine the international law and democracy.
Ajmal, stay with me. We've got much more to talk about. You're watching One Voice here on Asia One with me, Craig Vermey. Today, I'm looking at Afghanistan. 5 years after returning to power, the Taliban remain internationally unrecognised and isolated, but firmly in control of the country. With growing signs of tension between hardliners and Kandahar in Kabul, as the leadership seeks closer ties with Europe, India, questions remain over who truly holds the power and whether the movement can overcome its political isolation. You're watching One Voice here on Asia One with me, Craig Vermey. In today's show, I'm looking at how Afghanistan is increasingly caught between competing visions for its future, with ideological leaders in Kandahar often appearing at odds with officials in Kabul, who are pushing for a greater international engagement. While the Taliban point to improved security, critics argue that the country remains economically fragile, diplomatically isolated, and politically divided. To help me understand what is happening and why it matters, with me is Ajmal Suhail, Senior Intelligence and Counter-Terrorism Analyst and former Afghan politician. Ajmal, thank you for staying with us. Look, the Taliban claim they're improving security within the country and along the borders. Do you see that that's actually happening?
This stability or this control is more tactical. As you see at time and again, there's sort of the urban terrorist operations going on, specifically from ISIS-K or ISIS-KP. So they were able to suppress, they were able to coerce the opposition, specifically who were weak enough or who were more engaged in political or in a civil way of opposing the Taliban government. But when it comes to the military oppositions, I mean, strong military opposition, then they are still unable to totally curb the ISIS-KP. However, from the counterterrorism perspective, and intelligence indicators suggest that the ISIS-KP is not an existential threat for the Taliban, but it is a real threat for the Taliban regime, because they are able to operate in urban areas and also in the rural areas. And this operations undermines the Taliban claim of keeping Afghanistan stable and secure. So this is a major part that the Taliban should deal with. And again, as a matter of the areas, the border areas, whether it is between Afghanistan and Pakistan, or within Iran or any other Central Asian countries. So this is more a systematic instability in the regions that they're trying to project. I mean, the Taliban are trying to project power. As I said before, the Taliban harbor specific terrorist organizations for sort of their deterrence policy. They knew that when Pakistan has the strongest military and also the strong military leadership, at the top they have a tactical and also strategic weaponries. What the Taliban, if they are competing with Pakistan or any regional countries, they want to put a sort of influence, or they want to influence the regional countries. What they could offer, from the military point of view, they don't have something to do with. From political point of view, they don't have something. From the economic as well. The only thing they could refer to is the terrorist organizations they harbor, and they want to use it as a part of their strategy. Whether it is TTP in Pakistan, or whether it is the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan for Uzbekistan, or the Ansarullah for Tajikistan, or some other organizations in Iran, or maybe also the Uyghur movements, or the East Turkestan movement against the Chinese. So the thing is, they rely on this, and this instability is more systematic to be sort of the weakness of that they are unwillingly wanted.
So Pakistan has repeatedly called on the Taliban government to help shore up the border and push any terror cells back from the border. And the Taliban have said that they have no control over the terror cells in that region. Is there more that the Taliban should be doing?
The border areas, specifically between Iran and also Afghanistan and Pakistan, to some extent, this is like no man's land, or under control of no man, because for years and decades, even for centuries, the people, or the main player in the region were like local or tribal leaders, and in the meantime, like drug dealers, whether they are from Baloch drug dealers or Pashtun drug dealers or whatsoever. So this area is also of the interest of the Taliban. They don't want to have 100% of the control, because if they try to have 100% of control, it means they are engaging with another actor, or player that could be like the drug dealers or the influential tribal leaders, who are interested in having control over or having their autonomy. So when the Taliban are trying to 100% control, so this is against their regional autonomy. In this case, the Taliban will open another operational front to engage. So that's why the Taliban are trying to not touch it. And the second part is it is more systematically, because if the area is not under control, then one can have use it as a pretext that they don't have a control because the movements are operating. So that is why the Taliban leave the area and the movement to operate, and they are engaged in all these illegal weapon trafficking or drug trafficking, or even precious stones or some other antiquities. This is the part of the Taliban commanders' income. So that's why they don't want the area to bring it under their control.
Yeah. Now, let's look at the ideological shift in the last 5 years. From the outside world looking in, every step that the Taliban have been taking seems to be repressing women and girls and pushing them out of public life, taking them out of schooling. And while the Taliban continue to move in this direction, I can't see a way for them to move forward on the international stage.
So the Taliban, what they're doing is to suppress or to eliminate human rights and then suppress the woman from the society. They're trying to do it to consolidate their ideology. And secondly, that helps them to recruit or to keep some of the elements within the circle of the Taliban. If they give more, or if they make it possible for women to engage within the society, go to schools, universities, and working, so that will undermine their ideology in the first place. In second place, the recruitment process will be undermined, and meantime, those elements who are hardliners, they will leave the government or leave the Taliban regime and join the oppositions, because they will say that for 20 years we fought just to bring this so-called their mindset, or from their point of view, the Islamic regime, which is never has been an Islamic regime like that. So they will leave. That is why they are continuing to suppress women. But engagement as well. So when a group tries to engage with the international community and look for the international recognitions, this is sort of like a give and take. So you get the recognition, and you gave sort of like accountability. So you will be accountable for what you're doing. So in this case, from my perspective, and also intelligence indicator suggests that the Taliban are not really interested in the Taliban regime, in international recognition. If they were, they wouldn't have do like something against the women, against the minorities, and the human rights, and also they will not give a priority, or they will not give the possibility for terrorist organization to operate. So from my point of view, and intelligence indicators suggest that the Taliban are not really interested to engage or look for the international recognition.
But one country that has reached out to Afghanistan, and Afghanistan said this week that they are our brothers, is India interested in getting a foothold in Afghanistan to be on both sides of Pakistan?
I think Indians are more interested in pragmatic diplomacy or pragmatic engagement. if you look for decades, I mean, from the monarchy time of Afghanistan and then to the communist regime and then the Mujahideen regime and then the Taliban. So India all the time tried to be engaged with Afghanistan, who is in power or who can be empowered, or maybe they are trying to have relationship with both. Like during the monarchy, they had a very good relationship with the king Zahir Shah, but meantime they established relationship with the Dawood Khan because they thought when the king is gone and there would be an alternative to rely on. In the meantime, they had a very good relationship with the Dawood Khan presidency. In the meantime, they had established relationship with the communist parties or the socialist parties. And they thought as soon as the presidency of Dawood Khan will be removed and this group will come into power. And that's why they need to have the relationship.
And Afghanistan is quite rich in rare earth minerals and for mining and everything. Is that another reason why maybe China and India are interested?
Of course, the economic part is more of interest for India and also China, and also even for the US and European countries. I'm doing some sort of consultancy with a lot of European firms. They are interested to invest in Afghanistan, but there is some structural disability to operate in the country.
Thanks to Ajmal. And that brings us to the end of today's conversation, where I looked at Afghanistan's political climate. The coming months will be critical for Afghanistan as the Taliban interim government push for greater international engagement while facing continued criticism over governance and human rights. Relations with Pakistan, India and European countries will help shape the country's diplomatic future and could influence its economic recovery. Internal divisions between hardline and pragmatic fractions may also become more visible as pressure grows to address Afghanistan's worsening challenges. The key question is whether the Taliban can transform from an insurgents movement into a government capable of winning legitimacy at home and abroad, or whether isolation and instability will continue to define Afghanistan's future. Thank you, Ajmal Suhail, Senior Intelligence and Counter-Terrorism Analyst and former Afghan politician, for sharing your insights. And as always here on One Voice, we aim to cut through the noise and bring you the stories that matter from the voices that know. And if you missed any part of today's show, be sure to go to our YouTube channel, Asia One News. Until next time, I'm Craig Vermey, and thank you for watching One Voice.